Alright, on this video I'm going to be doing some problems from the homework. We were dealing with domain and range. We didn't get a chance to work on it too much. So I'm going to do some problems here from the homework. So this is problem 1. We're looking at a picture of a graph and we want to know what is the domain. Domain is generally, it's going to be dealing with your x values. I tell the students to look from side to side. So if you look at this, we actually have a point here. So this is actually, that's going to be the right barrier, so to speak. So for our domain, the furthest right x values, the furthest right that x values are defined on this graph is at 5. And the furthest to the left, well, if you look, the fact that this has an arrow means that this thing keeps going on and on and on. So really, there is no left-hand border. I'm drawing that just to make a point, but there is no border because this thing is going to keep going. So all of these values are going to have corresponding values on the graph, right? So because of that, our domain is actually going to be from negative infinity. So domain in this case is going to be from a negative infinity, open circle, not open circle, parenthesis, which means does not include, all the way up until 5, which is included. So we'll write the bracket. That's one way you could write it. You could also write it from negative infinity, x, like that. Two different ways to write it. All right? So that is our domain. So that would be what you put right here. Now the range is a different story. Range is talking about y values. And now you're going to be looking up and down. So you're going to be looking here. I don't really need arrows, but you're looking here. So the top value, the top y value that gets hit is 2. And the bottom one, again, if you look at the fact this has an arrow, it's going to keep going. So there is not going to be any lowest value. So what we're going to have is from negative infinity. So it's coming up from negative infinity. The highest point is going to be 2. And it's included. The answer for number 1. All right, now I'm jumping to number 4. Again, the domain is talking from side to side. So I'm going to look here. The x values, furthest right they go is 3. And if you look here, if you try and find a barrier on the left, you're going to realize that this arrow means that this is going to keep going. All right? So there is not going to be any least x value or lowest x value. So we're going to have our domain going from negative infinity all the way up until 3 with a bracket on 3. So, and you could also do negative infinity x 3. Hopefully I did y in the last question. I'm actually going to go back right now for range. Did I do that correctly? Yeah, I'm going back to number 1 just to say that this could be negative infinity. Let's do this again. Negative infinity y 2. That's another way to write it. All right, so let's go back here now. 2 ways to write the domain. Now I'm going to do the range in blue. So I'm going to erase this. For range, we're thinking up and down again. So think up and down. So the lowest value is right here at negative 2. And the highest value, well, really, if you think about the fact that this is going to start going, it's going to keep going, but there is no highest y value. So it's actually going to be, it's going to be from -2 up to infinity. And that'll be positive infinity. And that's that one. All right. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Okay, right here we do not have arrows. So when you look at the domain, you're actually going from here, left to right, side to side, to here. All right, there are arrows indicating it's continuing on. So our domain is this, from -5 all the way up to 4. So we write that, and these are filled in circles, are filled in dots, which means it includes. We are going to have examples, but this is from -5 with a bracket all the way up to 4 with a bracket. That's our domain. You could also write it as -5 with your x in the middle up to 4. Right, so that's our domain. All right, now I'm going to erase this and do the range. The range again is thinking or looking up and down. So for this, the highest point we're going to say is 3. All right, that the graph hits is -3. All right, so our range is going to be from -3 all the way to +3. And that looks right. Okay, you can write it as -3 y all the way up to 3. So either one will work. And let's do the last one. The last one is, you notice we have arrows going in both directions. So there really is no left side-to-side barrier. So in this case, your domain is just going to be all real numbers. There are no restrictions, so all reals. You could also write this as -infinity to +infinity. And you could write it other ways, but that's what we have, all real. Also, you might look at this and think, well, up and down, there are going to be restrictions, but if you look at this, the direction it's going, we're going to assume it's going to keep going down like this. Now, you might think it's going to stop at 3 and just approach -3, but and if you said that, I wouldn't necessarily mark you wrong, because you might think it's just going to, go along 3, and we talked about that with something else we did earlier. It's going to go like that. So if you looked at the graph and said, well, it's never going to touch -3, then your answer might be different. I was looking at this assuming that it was going to keep doing a slow movement, very slowly, and then the same way down here. Moving like that. If that was the case, we would have all reals for our range too. And that'd be -infinity to +infinity, 2 different ways to write it. All right. So there's a little bit of wiggle room on that one. If you looked at it, like I said, and thought that this 3 or -3, is an asymptote, and you think, well, the graph's never going to touch that, then your range would be from -3 to 2. But if you assume that this graph was going to keep kind of going down very slowly, then you'd have all reals. So, it depends on how you interpret it, but I'm interpreting it as it's going to keep on increasing very slowly and decreasing on the left very slowly. All right, so that is there are 4 problems that I did on the homework. We're going to do a lot more about this in class tomorrow. So if you don't understand it, we're going to go over it a lot more. All right?